My name is Shirley. Standing across the street, I watched as the sheriff's notice was affixed to the front door of the house where I grew up. The paper fluttered in the breeze, looking almost weightless, yet it carried the weight of a family's downfall. It's strange how something as simple as a single sheet of paper can shatter a home. I remember a time when this house was a place of warmth and love. But that was a long time ago. My family, once a source of comfort, had become a source of pain and betrayal. My father, Henry, was a proud but stubborn man. He owned a small construction business, but it had been struggling for years. My mother, Linda, was a passive woman who often went along with my father's decisions, even when they were wrong. My sister, Lucy, was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. And then there was my uncle, Frank, a freeloader who always seemed to show up when there was drama. I had moved back home after a tough period in my life. I thought I could find solace and support in my family, but I was wrong. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, my father slapped a stapled invoice onto the table, as if it were a court order. "You owe this family $15,000 in back rent," he said, tapping the page with 2 fingers. "And you're paying every cent or you're out." My mother didn't even look embarrassed. She lifted her wine glass and added, "We're charging interest now, 12% a month, like a real landlord." Lucy laughed so hard she nearly dropped her phone. "Shirley's credit score is about to go negative," she said, already typing away. I stared at the invoice in disbelief. In the tiny print at the bottom, I noticed a timestamp from a local print shop. The document had been printed 15 days earlier, before I had even moved back into the house. They had planned this. It was an ambush. I didn't scream. I just placed my fork down, folded the invoice, and looked around the table. My father looked pleased with himself, like he had finally found a way to control me. My mother wore that cold expression she always used when she wanted to be cruel. Lucy had her phone angled toward me, secretly recording my reaction. And Uncle Frank sat there nodding, looking smug and self-righteous. "You made a spreadsheet for your own daughter?" I asked. "No," my father said. "I made a spreadsheet for an adult who thinks she can just come and go as she pleases." I looked back at the invoice. Rent, utilities, inconvenience fee, and a made-up emotional strain charge. He had invented these charges just to reach the $15,000 mark. Emotional strain? I repeated. My mother leaned forward. "Do you know how much stress you've caused this family over the years?" Lucy snorted. Honestly, she should be grateful Dad didn't bill her more. Then she posted something on her social media and tilted the screen so I could see the caption, "Freeloader moved back home, LOL." That was the moment I knew I couldn't stay. I stood up and took the invoice with me. "Sit down," my father barked. "We're not done." "No," I said. "You are." I went upstairs to my old bedroom. Most of my things were gone. The bookshelf I built in high school was gone, and the framed photo of my debate trophy was missing. And on the family portrait in the hallway, someone had drawn a red X through my face with a dry erase marker. I stared at that picture and was hit by a flood of memories. When I was 17, my father's business was on the verge of collapse. We were just a few weeks away from losing the house. I sold my laptop, the one I needed for school, and the camera I had saved for 2 years to buy. I told my friends it was stolen and gave the money to my mother in a grocery store parking lot so my father wouldn't feel bad. Years later, whenever they talked about sacrifice, they only talked about their own. They never mentioned the sacrifice I had made to keep the family afloat. And now, they were treating me like a stranger, charging me exorbitant rent. When I came back downstairs with my duffel bag, my father blocked the front door. "Where do you think you're going?" he asked. "Out," I said. "Until you decide whether you want a daughter or a tenant." My mother folded her arms. "If you leave tonight, don't expect to come back and pretend nothing happened." I almost laughed. Pretend? They had planned this humiliation weeks in advance. Lucy leaned against the wall. You're being dramatic. Everybody pays rent. Then you first, I said. Her smile disappeared. What? You heard me. Show me your invoices. She looked at our parents, and in that moment, I knew it was all about me. It wasn't about fairness, it was about punishing me. I walked out without another word. I spent the first night in my car in a grocery store parking lot. The next day, I used the points I had saved for a vacation to get a week at an extended stay hotel. I called my best friend, Lily. She was the only one who knew the real me, the me before my family started to change. We met at a 24-hour diner. I told her everything, from the invoice to the timestamp to Lucy's social media stunt. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, they didn't snap. They staged it. I knew she was right. She worked in finance and was always blunt. Stop treating this like a family misunderstanding. It's a premeditated power play, she said. Don't argue feelings with people who only respect leverage. Start writing down every lie. So, I did. I wrote down the laptop I sold, the money I sent to help with property taxes, the emergency furnace replacement I paid for. I totaled up what I could prove, and it was over $19,000, more if I counted interest. A few days later, I received a message from Lucy. You're still sulking? Dad says the first payment is past due. I laughed. They owed me more than the fake debt they had invented. I sent a text to my father, tomorrow, 7 p.m. Kitchen. Have everybody there. He replied, good. Bring your first payment. Lily read the message over my shoulder. Perfect. They still think they're in control. The next night, I walked into the house wearing my work clothes. My father sat at the head of the table, my mother beside him, Lucy across from me, and Uncle Frank was there, as always. My father held out his hand. Envelope? I set down a folder instead. Not exactly. He frowned. What is this? Documentation, I said. For the next 10 minutes, I laid out all the evidence, transfer receipts, screenshots, and messages. I showed them the money I had given to help with the property taxes, the furnace replacement, and the utility bills. I presented a spreadsheet of all the money I had contributed to the household over the years, totaling $19,250. My mother went pale. My father tried to be angry, then tried to deny it. This is manipulative, he snapped. No, I said. What was manipulative was printing a fake debt before I even moved in. His eyes dropped to the timestamp on his own invoice. Lucy stopped smiling, and Uncle Frank cleared his throat. You want rent? Fine, let's talk numbers. But before you collect a single dollar from me, I want a signed statement acknowledging that I have repeatedly bailed this household out financially while being treated like a burden, I said. My mother said I couldn't force them to sign. I replied calmly, but I can force reality into the room. I slid 2 typed copies of the statement across the table. After a long moment, my mother signed first, her hand shaking. My father signed, thinking it would end the humiliation, but it didn't. I took the signed papers and stood up. Uncle Frank asked, so, what now? Now you live with what you tried to do, I said. As I was leaving, my father said, you're really going to walk out over paperwork? I paused. No, I walked out because my family mistook access to me for ownership. A week later, at 2 a.m., my phone started ringing. It was Lucy. Mom found something in the mail, and she's freaking out. Dad says the house could go into foreclosure. I drove to Uncle Frank's place. When I walked in, my mother was in tears, my father looked haggard, and Uncle Frank had lost his smugness. I picked up the certified mail and read it. It was a final notice of mortgage delinquency. They had been hiding a financial crisis while trying to extort money from me. My father said, "We need your help." I looked at him. "You mean the bum? The freeloader? The daughter you tried to charge retroactive rent to?" My mother started crying harder. "Shirley, please." Uncle Frank stepped in. "Your daddy made mistakes. All of you made mistakes," I said. "Some of you even made it into entertainment." Lucy looked down. My mother then said, "We were trying to push you to be responsible because we knew things were bad." "So, you were extorting me as a teaching tool?" I asked. No one answered. I decided to help, but on my terms. "I'll look at the documents. But if you lie to me, I'm done." I found out that my father's business had been losing money for months, and my mother had dipped into a savings account meant for insurance and never replenished it. And they had hidden $22,000 in a separate account, not to save the house, but to help Lucy move to Los Angeles. I told them, "Tomorrow, I'll contact the lender. You will give me all the statements and tell me the truth." Over the next week, I became the responsible one. By day, I worked as a marketing analyst. By night, I managed my family's financial crisis. I called the lender, gathered statements, and organized timelines. The lender offered a revised reinstatement agreement with strict conditions. My parents saw hope, but I saw a final warning. I knew they wouldn't change. A week later, the first payment was due. I reminded my father twice, but he brushed me off. He mailed a personal check late, and it was the wrong type of payment. When the lender flagged the defective payment, the account was put under review. 2 weeks later, a formal letter arrived saying the reinstatement terms had been breached. When I walked into the house, the panic was palpable. My father was pacing, my mother was crying, and Lucy was standing there defensively. My father snapped at me, "You knew this was serious." I laughed. "So, the daughter you tried to extort should have reminded you more?" Lucy said it was all my fault. I looked at them all and said, "Dad hid the mortgage crisis, Mom helped draft the fake invoice, Lucy mocked me, and Uncle Frank called me a bum. And after I still helped, you blame me?" My father tried the old emotional blackmail, but I pulled out the signed acknowledgement of all the money I had contributed. My mother asked, "Can you fix this?" I thought about all they had done. "No," I said. "Not the way you think." That night, I moved the rest of my things out. Before leaving, I looked at the family portrait one last time. Someone had wiped the red X off my face, but it was too late. 30 days later, I watched as the sheriff's notice was put on the door. The calls started coming in. My mother cried, my father got angry, and Lucy panicked. I ignored the first round of calls. When I finally answered, my mother begged for help. I told her no. My father accused me of letting them lose the house. I told him they had lost it themselves. A week before the lockout, I made a final transfer of $15,000 to Lucy. Memo line, rent. She had laughed at my situation and treated responsibility as a joke. Now she had a choice, save the house and be tied to our parents' mess or save herself. She chose herself. She signed a lease in Los Angeles and left before the lockout. When my mother found out the money had gone to Lucy, she started screaming. After the house was lost, my parents started telling people I had abandoned them. I uploaded a calm, time-stamped statement to a private community group, along with the fake invoice, the signed acknowledgement, and audio clips of them admitting their scheme. The truth spread. My father lost business referrals, my mother stepped down from her church volunteer position, and Lucy lost her job offer in Los Angeles. The last time I saw my parents was outside their new apartment. My father looked smaller, and my mother looked tired. My mother asked if we could start over. I told her, "You wanted me to learn responsibility. This is me learning it." This experience taught me that blood doesn't excuse exploitation. A home is not sacred just because you grew up in it. Protecting your peace is not selfish, it's necessary. So, if the people who were supposed to protect you try to turn your love into a debt, would you forgive them or let them pay the full price?